Dawntrail, a controversial expansion to say the least. The number of active players is crumbling down ever since 2024. People seem to just lose faith in the game. I can't blame them, there are good reasons for that. As for me, while I do have some criticism, I'm enjoying my time in Final Fantasy XIV quite a lot. This might be one of my favorite expansions by far, but that will be a discussion for another day. Greetings, I'm Paulu, and this is a video about the mages of Final Fantasy XIV, their current design and what I think about them. I enjoy playing them all, and just so you know, I'll be talking about both casters and healers. This first half of the video will be about the healer role, with the White Mage, the Scholar, the Astrologian and the Sage. The magical DPS role, also called casters, will be last, and is composed of the Black Mage, the Summoner, the Red Mage, the Blue Mage and the Pictomancer. I'll talk about Blue last, as its status as a limited job might, well, limit the interest about it. Some general thoughts before diving into each of them individually. I'm enjoying what Square Enix is doing with them. It's not perfect, there are ways to make some of them more interesting, but they are good as they are. In my eyes, everyone can enjoy at least one of them for different reasons. They are all unique enough for people to have preferences. Even I do, but I won't admit it too much. I defend each of them with all my might, and I want to see each of them shine as much as they deserve. With that out of the way, let's dive into the healing role. We currently have 4 healers, who are separated in 2 main categories, pure healers and shield healers. This is what we all know, and are accustomed to since Endwalker. But there is also 2 subcategories, the buffers and the selfish. Anyway, each of them has something unique they bring to the table. Let's get started. The blueprint for all the healers in Final Fantasy XIV, the White Mage hasn't changed all that much since Shadowbringer. And while that is the case for most of them, this one in particular feels a bit dated in design, but not in a bad way. Relying on their GCDs way more than the others, thanks to the lilies, it also gives this job a unique flair to it. It's also a simple job to learn and master, and is the perfect starting point for anyone wanting to try out healing. It's welcoming, has powerful healing spells that work simply, while still having some nuances and unique tools for it to feel, or so I think, pleasant to master. There are some criticism about the lilies, as some people in high-end content use them just for movement, which in a way defeat the purpose of them, that is healing without any DPS drop. But since we also have to use the Blood Lily for the 2-minute buffs, we just have to use those flowers to get, well, our flowers DPS wise. We can also use Afflatus Misery as a movement option of course, which is sometimes the best way to use it. Sure, it's a bit annoying, and I wonder if Square Enix will change that. Modifying them to be our GCDs would solve it, but it would also make the drum lose a part of its personality, which will be sad. Is there a correct answer to that question? Well, we will see. I personally don't have strong opinions about this job. Sure, at high level it feels a bit lackluster, especially compared to its counterpart, the Astrologian. But it's also way more easy to play, and has less resources to manage, and is my healer of choice when discovering a new extreme or savage fight. For that, I think it's fine, but I agree that it could be a bit more interesting. How is another question that I don't have the answer for now. One of my pet peeves is that in this game, we, as healers, have to DPS. It is expected of us to do so. But our DPS rotation, for the most part, is a one-button spam with a dot and maybe 1 or 2 GCDs from time to time. I wish we could have more intricate damage dealing kits, I'm not asking for anything too fancy, of course. We already have players who barely do any healing, so giving them a busy DPS rotation will only decrease their will to press any healing button. The White Mage, for example, has Presence of Mind, which not only reduces spell cast time and recast time by 20%, but also grant access to secret sites. If maybe we could have 2 charges of that, we could already have something to chew on. Is that the best upgrade? I'm not sure. Although my stance still stands. The best healer to start the role with. Now for the odd one. Yes, for me, Scholar is the weirder healer, by far. Its kit is strange, as using some buttons will keep you from using others entirely, like Dissipation or Summon Seraph. The fairy, still doing its healing, sometimes costs you some delays with its actions, like Fulmination. But you know what? I freaking love that. The quote-unquote junk of the Scholar is what gives it its flavor, its uniqueness amongst the others. I'm really hoping they don't erase Selene's auto-healing spell, like they did with the Summoner's Pet. That would be absolutely devastating. One of the perks of playing Scholar is that fairy who heals anyone in the need. And sure, that healing isn't all that strong, but it gives that feeling of help, which I appreciate greatly. This was my first ever job in Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm deeply attached to it. It gives this fantasy of a healing summoner, and it's unique and great. The only thing I want them to change the most is the fairy gauge, as there's only one spell attached to it now, and I find it a bit sad. I want more options. I don't know why Fey Blessing doesn't consume it anymore. It's a bit disappointing. What about all the other fairy spells? They could use this gauge. Maybe that will feel a bit artificial though, but I really want them to do something with it, make it more interesting to manage. Adding a DPS spell attached to it would be cool, but then again, would we use it for anything else if we had the choice? I don't think so. Already the Everflow stacks are mainly used for this 100 potency DPS at high level. But if all the fairy spells are linked to it, then maybe people will think twice before wasting it for a bit more DPS. That would give it a tension that I so enjoy with Scholar. Apart from that, I feel like this job is not that hard to get into, but is complex to master. It lacks the instant shield its counterpart can do, except with Seraphism, and a lot of its OGCDs consume ether stacks, so its versus management is a bit more taxing than those of the Sage. But then again, I'm a big fan of its design. We need jobs like the Scholar, with strong perspectives and really specialize in what it does. Mind you, it can heal just fine, even more so since Dawntrail and Seraphism. But its job is mitigating damage, and at that, Scholar is by far the best. Please Square Enix, whatever changes you do, leave Selene alone. The never-ending rework of the Astrologian is maybe his more apparent feature, well, besides its cards of course. We got a lot of different ways to use them in the past, a new one for each expansion, which has its perks, you know. We never know what the job will look like in 3 years. But yeah, bad jokes aside, Dawntrail rendition of the Astrologian is not that different from Endwalker's healing-wise, as Astro can do pretty much anything really. Good healing? Check. Shielding? Check. Mitigating? Check. Buffing allies? Check. Having an interesting DPS rotation? Well, for a healer, it's not that bad either. This jack of all trades, master of most of them, is a juggernaut among the healers. It, alongside the Scholar, is the most broken healer, surpassing the White Mage in nearly every category. It's just a bit more complex to play, having a more busy toolkit, which I know some people enjoy quite a lot. The Dawntrail card system is a departure from what we have experienced since Shadowbringer, and a callback to what the cards used to be. Each one has a different effect. Their randomness nature is now completely gone, thanks to Astral and Umbral Draw, each having a fixed set of cards they will always pull. This rework got a mixed response from the player base, as did all the reworks before it. Some say we lost the complexity of the job, while others were happy to have cards that do not just buff allies. I'm on the second team, but with some things to say about it. I indeed think this new system is great. Having cards doing different things is great, and it adds to the personality of the job. In theory, we now have more possible targets to our buffs, and a more varied utility tool. All that would be great if it really was the case, but in game it's not how things played out. Sure, we don't just buff our DPSs anymore, but the defensive cards are now mainly for our tank, and sure, me and others use those cards on different targets based on the situation. But Astro's healing kit is already so powerful, adding a solo target shield or a hot isn't anything to write home about. There are cards that are really unique, like the Spear, which is the only thing in the Astro entire kit to do what it does, which is a healing buff. But Ball is a bit lame, and Draw 3 is really what hurts this rework the most in my opinion. Both the Ewer and the Spire do things that other OGCDs accomplish, which is so unfortunate. I saw some people talking about the chronomancy side of the Astrologian design, and having this Draw 3 doing effects along those lines would be cool, like a delayed heal without a mitigation effect, looking at you, Exaltation, or a delayed shield, or maybe a running speed buff. That would be extra niche, I know, but to be honest, I'm not a game designer for a reason. I don't have anything particular to say about the minor arcanas. I enjoy them for what they are, nothing more, nothing less. But still, I'm happy about Dawntrail version of the job. I think it's the right direction for it, and I'm looking forward to the next rework, with hope that it's gonna improve on what we currently have, rather than a total change. The last addition in the healing role, Sage is a blast to play for me. It has received little changes going from Endwalker to Dawntrail, but the ones it got are amazing. Yes, I'm talking directly about its Dawntrail design, solely because of your creation discretia. Having an AoE dot available at any time is truly great, and I love using it in dungeon pools. Would it have been better for it to stack with your creation doses, like it was the case during the media tour? Absolutely, but I still love the fact that we got that spell anyway. Philosophia and Psyche are both good in their own way, and are welcome for what they are. But yeah, that AoE dot, amazing, big fan. Other than that, Sage is the easiest shielder to play, thanks to its instant shields and mitigations, having access to a lot of powerful OGCDs that are simple to use, a DPS rotation that is really straightforward. You simply can't miss with this healer. Since its introduction in Endwalker, Sage has, in my opinion, one tiny issue. The name of its actions and their icons are a bit similar for non-Greek speakers. The colors are blue or pink mainly, that's it, and the spells all sound same-ish. For a newer player, its actions feel a bit counterintuitive, and it's without counting Eucrasia on top of that. Several people have told me that they simply don't comprehend its toolkit for those reasons. And it's a shame truly, because Sage, once you get the hang of it, is easy to play and versatile. It has great mobility thanks to half its GCDs being instant and also with tools like Toxicon and Icarus. It has good shielding and healing capabilities. While yes, its shields are not as strong as the Scholars, they are also faster to come out, and the healing is, in my opinion, better. The combo Zoe and Phlegma is insane for that. While in higher difficulty content Sage isn't the best option, it's still a viable one. but its healing kit's sheer versatility and ease of use are good enough for me to discover new and old encounters with it, and having a good time at that. I cannot recommend this job enough for people who want to try out the barrier healers. Despite some issues, it's the best suited job for anyone willing to be patient, curious, and wanting to dive deep into the healing role. Now for the DPSs. We currently have 5 casters, who are separated in 2 main categories, the Razers and the non-Razers. Among them we have the Blue Mage, which is its own thing and is separated from the others. This is what we all know, and are accustomed to since Endwalker. Does this sound familiar to you? Well, it's kinda the same for the healers, and Endwalker truly have solidified the Mage's design. Dawntrail is just a continuation. Anyway, it's just as I said for the healing role. Each of them have something unique and enjoyable. Let's start! The first of the casters, the Black Mage in Dawntrail, is controversial, to say the least. The patch 7.2 rework have reshaped a lot of its gameplay. Shorter cast and recast time being the biggest change this job has ever received. In that aspect, Black Mages of old just ditched the job for the most part. Things like its uniqueness and challenging nature is now gone. Or so was the initial reaction. I would be curious to hear what they have to say now about it. As for me, I love those changes. I know, this might be a controversial take, but I really enjoy them. And hear me out. Ever since patch 7.2, the Black Mage feels way more dynamic to play. Sure, more simple too, but it is still an oddball among the DPSs by not being 2-minute centric. Its damage is still splashed during the entire fight. And sure, we can keep 2 or 3 Xenoglosses for the 2 minutes. But that is not that realistic of an expectation, since those are great movement and weaving tool. You also have Mana Font, but this should be paired with ley lines, not really during a 2 minutes, but during a time window where you can milk the most out of them. In that aspect, Black Mage is still unique and offers a different perspective on what DPSing is in the context of Final Fantasy XIV. You do your own thing during the entire fight, without much care about what the others do. Whatever you feel like doing during any moment, well, do it, and keep your tools for moments when you can make the most out of them. The beginning of Dawntrail was horrible for the Black Mage, doing less damage than the newly added Pictomancer, which was a shame given that the artist also buffs allies, and has more defensive utility. But then again, since 7.2, the job is back to full power thanks to its changes and the Picto nerfs. It is THE job to play if you want faster clear of high-end contents fights now, which is the place this job belongs to. Also, using transpose is so much fun. Before 7.2 I played a bit of Black Mage in red content, on the first Extreme and the first Unreal of Dawntrail to be precise. It was fine, and really challenging, but I just wasn't vibing that much with it. Dare I say, it was my least favorite mage to play, DPS and healers combined. Now it still is a bit challenging, less than before, sure, but also way more fun for me. I have a big complaint though. The AoE rotation. It is, without a doubt, the lamest amongst the casters, by far. Hell, healing in dungeon is more fun than that. 2 AoE spells are completely useless if you want the biggest numbers on your screen. High Fire 2 and High Blizzard 2 are just bad. They don't do enough damage to be worth the effort. But then again, if you don't use them, you have like 4 spells to use, with a foul sometimes to spice things up. But it's just like adding curry powder to pasta. It's okay, but nothing fancy either. But yes, Square Enix, please buff those 2 spells, because for now, doing dungeon as Black Mage feels kinda pathetic. Anyway, a lot of what Black Mage is now comes from the patch 7.2, except that AoE rotation. And if you don't like those changes, it's fine. And I hope you have found a job for you, I really do. But personally, I'm pleased with those changes, and I hope it will remain a bit weird, fun, and dynamic. From one controversial caster to another. Ever since its rework at the launch of Endwalker, people have such strong opinions about this little mage. Boring, too simple, not a caster anymore, their favorite caster, hype, etc. Let's break it down. Is it too simple, which in terms makes it boring? Maybe yes. It may lack a bit of depth compared to the other casters. Its rotation is set in stone for the most part. Some people call it a physical ranged DPS too, thanks to its mobility and a lot of its spell being instant casts. To that I say no. Summoner is still a magic user and has spells that take some time to cast, like Rune 3 or the Ifrit rune. The best caster? Well, to each their own, I won't judge that. For the hype, I get that. Summoning great primals and watching them unleash their fury, like a classical summon in any Final Fantasy game, is amazing, and I'm a big fan of that. Its rework for me was a surprise, but not that huge. Its past design felt dated, and somehow incoherent. The summoning part of its kit was okay at best, and the reason people loved that job was its complexity, which comes in part thanks to its dots. Managing them while doing its rotation was a nightmare for some, or a blast for others. I was bad at it, but was still having so much fun trying. Not having those dots anymore is sad, and not having a dot mage feels weird in an MMO. But maybe that is a relic of the past, I don't know. What truly disappointed me about this rework was the pet not doing damage by itself anymore. I enjoyed having an active pet instead of a shield supplier. I understand why they did it. Having that summoning part of its kit being central now wouldn't have mixed well with the autos of the Egi. I remember already during the Stormblood and Shadowbringer eras, people complained about the pet's somewhat lack of responsiveness. This was a jank I enjoyed thoroughly, but then again, I wasn't a good summoner, just an enjoyer. Still, having a pet following you devoid of any life feels sad. I wish they could have made the pet work with this new design, doing autos while we cast spells or even summons. I'm happy we still have that Egi following us though, don't get me wrong, and having Radiant Aegis attached to it is good, but yeah, I guess it is what it is. From Endwalker onwards, Summoner is primarily a utility job, and I find its current design fine. It's a bit too strict, its rotation won't change all that much, and on some fights where you have to hold your 2 minutes, etc., it's a pain to just cast Rune 4 over and over again. But it's also simple to use, and I enjoy having a job easy to play and master. It still has a bit of depth, especially knowing when casting Ifrit is best fit, or when to apply the Garuda dot to get the most out of it. Still, I think it needs more variety among its summon and their gameplay. The Bahamut and Phoenix having essentially the same gameplay is a bit disappointing, and not having more diverse pool of summons feels like a miss. But Summoner, as it stands now, is good in my opinion. It's the best entry to the caster role, and I won't blame people for loving it. On the contrary, I'm happy this job let people have fun in a game that is becoming more and more complex, encounter-wise. It's also my comfort job. When I'm not feeling well or a bit down, playing it gives me a peace of mind, and I thank it every day for that. Now for the Red Mage, my true main, my favorite mage amongst them all. Funny enough, this caster was the easiest to play back in Stormblood and Shadowbringer. But with all the changes the other mages have undergone in recent years, I feel like it has some of the least mobility now. That's only my opinion, but even with all the tools the red mage has, like dual cast, its finishers, acceleration, etc., it feels more restrictive movement-wise than the others. Not in a bad way though. Okay, maybe the black mage still has less mobility. And I'm being a drama queen about it, but you know, you will have to cast your spells, especially if you aim to output the maximal DPS. You will try to find ways to use swiftcast and accelerations for OGCD's alignment, and will go further and further away from using those abilities for dodging mechanics, which is common red mage optimization, has been for years now. Indeed, not much has changed for the red mage. It still plays the same as before, of course with small variations, but compared to the other casters, it feels right at home to play it, regardless of the expansion. And I'm happy about it. I feel like its design is nearly perfect. It's really fun, a bit hard to get into and optimize, especially with this last Savage tier, right, M6S and M7S? But its design isn't without flaws. A common critique was that for each new expansion, Red Mage only receives a new finisher to its melee combo. Which yeah, is funny because we got 2 more, back to back. But with Dawntrail, this is not true anymore. Acceleration has received a rework, which I love, and same for Manification. More OGCDs, a brand new Grand Impact, and an AoE melee combo that feels a bit better to use, thanks to the tweaks they've done. To be honest, I don't see how they could change this job. There are ways, of course, like making its melee combo being able to hit from far away. Not the biggest fan of that personally. Red Mage has to get close for its burst window. This is part of its identity, and while in high content, going melee might be dangerous from time to time, looking at you, M7S, erasing this would be such a shame. This ties in with its restrictive mobility I briefly talked about earlier, but I'm ready to die on that hill. Thinking about ways to do our big numbers is, in my opinion, fun, and what makes it interesting. Another change that is brought up a lot is getting rid of its combat res, which could be great, if and only if they give it even more utility tools, like another buff for example. I like its support design, and would like to see it cramped up to match the potential loss of its res. Sure, bidding farewell to the res mage would be sad, but welcoming an all-powerful support mage would be awesome. What can I say? I'm a sucker for supporters. But on and all, I love the red mage, and I'm looking forward to 8.0. Will it receive significant changes or not? Either way, in the meantime, I'm having a blast with it. The newest addition to the mages, the Pictomancer, was revealed 1.5 years ago. And oh my god, this one was also controversial. First, people were happy to see this job from Final Fantasy VI being reintroduced to the world, and were curious to see how its gameplay would turn out. Some were sad that it wasn't the Necromancer-based job that they wanted. But hey, that's the name of the game, we never know what we will get. The most obnoxious trait about Pictomancer was, of course, its brokenness at launch, which lasted for way too long. Making more damage than Black Mage, its direct competitor, while buffing its allies and easier to play, this wasn't fair in the slightest. But even since the nerfs it received from the patch 7.2, this caster is more in line with its design, or so I feel like. Hammer was a bit weak after that, but thanks to the changes from 7.3, the job feels good to play again, thanks to the hammer buff and the filler spell nerfs. Now that the dust has settled, what do we think? Well, it's no surprise that I really love this caster. Its design is spot on, unique and tons of fun. It's whimsical, its limit break is awesome, unlike the other new job we got for Dawntrail, and playing it feels very different from the other casters. It is the first to receive a 1-2-3 combo, like the melees and the tanks have, and painting things on the battlefield feels as great as it feels quirky. I like that its DPS is lower than the black mages, since it's a buffer and have more utility overall, being just on top of the erasers feels right. But while I've enjoyed what the dev team has quote-unquote offered us, I would like to see some things added. More landscape motif and weapon motif mainly. The lack of variety, even just visually, is a bit sad for the artsy job. They could give it a 1-minute buff, for example, just like it has a 1-minute hammer and animal. It would maybe make it a bit more difficult to play, given that its push and pull comes from its resource management, but also more vibrant in my opinion. We could paint a rainbow sky, for example, or a sunset for the landscape. For the weapon, a staff like Ramu's, or a flag, or like a calculator. I don't know, I'm not a designer or anything. But you know what I would love for the Picto to get? The ability to draw anything. Like the bard can play instruments and do Final Fantasy songs and nothing else, of course. Picto being able to draw anything via a tool would be great. But, and that's a big but, I don't think it's really a great idea given how we, as people, are. I remember Miiverse, the stage on Super Smash Bros. 4, and yeah, people were wild. And that was just for a Nintendo game. Imagine the same thing in Final Fantasy XIV? Gosh, the horror. But anyway, this job feels nearly perfect as it is now, and I hope they won't touch it any further for the rest of Dawntrail, now that it's perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Now for the limited job, the only one, until 7.5x. Well, I love it! Sure, a quote-unquote legal version would have been cool for Dawntrail. That's what I was hoping when we knew that a caster would be added for our new adventure in the Troll. But it didn't happen. And never will, I guess. The spells we have are wild, and will just not work with the current design of the jobs, and will be a nightmare to balance. The only option is to get rid of what makes blue itself, which is learning spells via monsters. And I know there could be ways to do it, like having as a job quest to fight specific enemies in a solo instance, so we get our spells at the end of said quests. But like, it will be less fun. I just absolutely love the creativity that we have with our choices of spells, even if they are, let's say, meta spells and the others. But if you don't care all that much and just want to do dungeons with friends and the masquerade, well, who cares? One thing that the devs could copy-paste about the blue mage onto the other casters, especially the red mage and the summoner, is the cooldown on the res spell. This puts a heavy restriction on it, which could be balanced out by having, for the summoner, a more interesting DPS rotation, and for the red mage, as I said before, more support capabilities. It's only an idea, of course, but I think it would make for interesting changes. On another note, I can't wait for the update. It might come around patch 7.5 or sooner, I don't know. Maybe with the Beastmaster, maybe earlier, or later. But going into Endwalker's areas and fights, I wonder what spells we will get. Maybe being able to collide two planets, or just rerun time itself. Some cool things are possible, but we will have to wait and see. And I will be pleased either way. I'm itching to learn new spell. It's been some time. I've mentioned Beastmaster earlier, and I wonder how and if those two will interact. With only one limited job for so long, I confess, I hardly can imagine how they could benefit from one to the other. But it could be cool and fun. Depends on how and if they do it. Will the Beastmaster be able to fill any role too? I guess yes. But we will have to wait and see. But yeah, for now, I have not much to say about the Blue Mage. I have fun helping people in PF and doing some duties with my FC friends. Thank you all for watching. This was my first ever spoken video, and I plan to do many more. It's a lot of work, especially in English, so the release schedule won't be regular, but it will be full of passion and magic, so I hope I'll see you there. Magically yours, Polu.